reason why you all are here is to talk about future fit and connecting and engaging to build future skills. And what we have our panel here of a couple of really great people that are going to walk us through what future fit looks like in their organizations, as well as some of the principles that we have developed to help you become more future fit in your organizations. So without further ado, let me introduce the two people here on our panel. And first up we have, and I have my notes, here we go. All right, so Corey Yugler is an L&D professional who brings diverse experience to her current work at Best Buddies International. Out of college, she was in an improv comedy group at the LA-based Comedy Store and started her career in the entertainment industry as a script supervisor for major motion pictures. She worked alongside renowned film directors ranging from, drum roll please, Oliver Stone to Martin Scorsese. And after years of volunteering on causes she was passionate about, she moved to the nonprofit sector where she did project management, fundraising, and learning initiatives. Her work at Best Buddies International brings together this wide range of experience to provide learning initiatives through online platforms to address BBI's diverse learning needs. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you.
Yes? Oh, please. Okay. And next up, as the CTO of Go1, Barnaby Dorfman manages product UX and engineering with a constant focus on creating customer value. Prior to Go1, Barnaby was CTO of PayScale, the leading compensation SaaS company, which helped grow from a venture-backed startup through private equity acquisitions. Earlier roles include 7 years at Amazon as head of product for the marketplace and VP of search technology. Thank you very much for that. Our searches are much more easier. Barnaby invented several internet technologies and has an MBA from the Duck School at Dartmouth. Welcome, Barnaby. Thank you. Yes, for sure. And I am Shannon Tipton. I'm the owner of Learning Rebels and the co-founder of Emerging Stronger. And you can find me on LinkedIn, as with any of our panelists here. And we welcome your connections. So you can find me at literally Shannon Tipton. And you can also find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all the things. So I like to say, if you can't find me, there are bigger things happening in the world. Like the zombie apocalypse has finally come and gotten us all. Okay. And the work with Emerging Stronger with partnership with Go1 was really important to the ebook that we created. That's the foundation of what we're talking about here today. Now, I have a question for you. So let's go back into Menti real quick. And the question I have for you is, what critical skills will your organization need in order to be future fit? So when you think about your organization now, when you think about the future, and especially when we're talking about skills that we don't even know we're going to need, what do you think you're going to have to do, or what sort of skills do you think that you're going to have in order to help your organizations along? And that could be skills such as, empathic questioning. What skills are going to carry us through the future? Adaptability, data analytics, and culture change. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think data analytics in particular becomes really critical to what we're doing and what we're facing. Because even though we don't know what technology is going to bring as we round the curve of where we are at now historically, as well as in years coming forward, we do know that we're going to need humans behind that data and behind that AI and behind that machine learning. So how are we then going to prepare ourselves? So we think, yes, and we've got to be more analytical, critical thinking and problem solving. Absolutely. So now my follow-up question to this is, what are the challenges you face when trying to prepare your organization to be future fit? So we've identified some of the future fit skills that we're going to need. Now, what are the challenges that we are facing? We know we need to get there, but there are always barriers. Do we go around them? Do we go over them? Do we go under them? How do we address them? And do we even know what those barriers are going to be? Antiquated thinking, not a profitable industry. Okay, so some of your industry is not profitable, or you anticipate it not being profitable?
It's not.
It's not. Is it a nonprofit?
No, it's utility.
It's utility. Yes. And attracting talent, retaining talent, time, resistance to change, digging in the heels, losing sight of the future because of what is happening now. So we let what's happening now get in the way of what's going to happen in the future. And this is where I would love to bring in Barnaby and Corey to talk about some of the challenges. So when you think about future fit, so I'll start with Corey. So Corey, when you think about future fit for your organization and the skills that you're going to need in order to bring Best Buddies forward, what are some of the challenges you faced when you first came on board, and how did you address those?
Right. Well, for my company, like getting in front of them, just like in their day, is such a challenge. So finding where they are, unless I have them strapped to their chairs, which never happens in my company, we're mostly virtual. So that was a real challenge. And they just kept saying, well, we don't want to have to go here, we don't have to go there. So the real challenge was finding where they are and then getting in front of them. So that's, for me, a big challenge.
Right.
And so
I'm sure that's relatable, right? Getting in front of your people, finding out where they are at, trying to determine what they need.
Right.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, if I go on about teams, that's where my company is. Everybody's on Teams. Everybody's living there. They're living there 24/7, really. And so that's where that's my goal, and that's my effort right now is catching them there.
Okay. Barnaby, what are you seeing?
Well, I think similarly, so at Go1 we have a large library of learning content that spans many, many different categories. But I think the point of meeting learners where they are is really important. So we have a Teams app, we have web-based apps, we're working on a Slack app. But I think sort of zooming out a little bit, it's really interesting to me that we're even talking about skills. If I think about education and the sort of the history of education, it used to be the challenge was sort of cramming knowledge into people's heads, right? Like you had to know what year the War of 1812 happened and stuff like that, right? And now we don't talk about that anymore because we have sort of all the data, all the facts are available at our fingertips. And it really is this skills gap that we're trying to address. And what we see is there's sort of, I think of it in sort of three tiers. The first tier, and where a lot of L&Ds started out, is really around compliance, the things you must do to be employed here. And then I think the second two tiers that we've seen, and certainly the pandemic has been an accelerant of this, are what are the things I need to do to prosper in my job? And so probably one of the top courses or categories of courses we've been seeing is actually Excel, because you can't turn to the person in the cube next to you and say, how do pivot tables work again? You have to find a resource for that. And then I'd say the top of that pyramid that we're also seeing, which is still related, is really how do I actually thrive and be happy and self-actualized in this role? And so we have a lot of courses and material that is also, we've seen a surge in the consumption of around things like meditation, mindfulness at work, conflict resolution, those kinds of things. And again, really finding a way to match up the individual with the content that they need in the moment. And also, and I guess the last thing I'll say on this, I mean, I've been in tech now for 3 decades, and L&D online e-learning really reminds me of what e-commerce was like in the late 90s. And I think it's, there's so much innovation ahead of us, and the ability to really figure out, is this a person who learns well with like small bites, 10 minutes a day? Or is it somebody who likes to go deep for 8 hours on something? Or are they more of a visual learner or an auditory learner? Or do they need to engage? Or do they do better in a team setting? And so it's early. I'm super excited because I'm only a year into this industry. I've been in human capital management for about a decade. But meeting people where they are and with what they need is the opportunity and the challenge.
And I think those are some really great points. What I'm really intrigued by was your mention of mental health, and so well-being and balancing well-being. So is that an area that you all see as important to you becoming more future fit for your organizations? Is this something that will need to be addressed in order to tackle the challenges that you saw? When we went through and Emerging Stronger interviewed a number of learning and development professionals and a number of organizations, as well as sifting through the data that comes out of McKinsey and the World Economic Forum, what we determined was there was a thread. And that thread led us to the 5 principles of really becoming future fit. And those 5 principles, when you look at those principles and you thread them through what it is that you hope to accomplish, such as connecting with the right priorities. And what we mean by that is ensuring that you have a North Star with your learning initiatives. And does it connect to the business initiatives, right? Those two things have to align and connect. Then connecting with the right content. So do you have the right content in place? Because, we might think that everybody needs to eat a salad, but your audience really wants to eat pizza that night, and those two things then become disconnected. So how can we connect those two things? And that then dovetails into connecting to what's relevant, then helping managers maintain that connection to the relevancy and to the content and to the North Star, and then to improve that connection. How are we assessing success? How are we ensuring that we are indeed enabling people to be successful the way that they need to be successful? And so the QR code that you have up there is the Future Fit ebook. And that ebook also gives you an email challenge, just so you know, because Emerging Stronger just doesn't create stuff. We want you to actually do something with that stuff. And I'm sure that Go1 would appreciate that too. And that's why Go1 is an important partner with us in order to put this important information together. And so now, based upon what you just heard and some of the other future fit skills and challenges, I'll start with Barnaby this time. So tell me, what do you see from your clients? What are they telling you that their challenges are, and where the 5 principles might fit into this?
Sure. Well, I think the example of, I'm just thinking about, in a nuclear power plant, knowing the right thing to do is not hard to find, but in my head, where I went with that was the soft skills, right? Okay, it's not clear what you should do because 2 different data points are conflicting that should be the same. Now what do I do? And the person who watches gauge A says it's A, and the person who watches gauge B says it's gauge B. And it's like, how do we get better at resolving that conflict in the data and moving forward? So I think we are seeing a lot of people asking us to help people, frankly, with soft skills. That's one in particular that's coming up more and more. And I think, again, just this huge shift. I think it's, we're in a room, we're not wearing masks. That's kind of a unique experience in the last couple of years. And you think about the huge changes that have been brought about by technology, evolution of technology, and then accelerated by the pandemic. And I don't think we all know, I know we don't know where it's all going to wind up, but if past is prologue, I think we can see that technology is going to enable us to work in new ways that, we've all adopted Zoom and doing things like that, but will artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality maybe become a way that you could have that experience of being in a control room with another person and experience something like the series of events that, led to, you mentioned Chernobyl and Fukushima. I think the ability for us as an industry to actually address that and help people with that. I think the other thing I would mention is just, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal last week about people who finished up their college degrees or their master's programs remotely and have now started jobs and never met the people they work with, 100% remote. And there may be a whole generation of people who never actually work in an office. But think about that for a second. And then think about what are the social implications of that? What are the learning and development implications of that? And then how do we as L&D professionals help those individuals with the soft skills that you would develop around the water cooler?
Right.
And kind of those kinds of issues. And just trying to think a couple of steps ahead around the needs of a new workforce. And I guess the last point I'll make is I think the Great Resignation's been talked about a lot, and it makes for a good headline. But if you really look at the data, we're at full employment, highest employment levels, pretty much in U.S. history. It's more of a great relocation. People have moved from one position to another, one industry to another, one job to another, profession to another, and that has two follow-on effects that I think we all need to think about. One is, okay, well, these people are now in new industries, and the ways of learning are different. Again, you're not learning from your coworker sitting next to you. How do we think about proactively reaching out to people and creating programs that help them through the journeys they're going to have to make to become successful professionals and scale a career ladder? And then secondly, the people who are left behind, because so often with automation and technology, companies are like, well, I had 4 people doing that, 2 resigned. The 2 that are left, there's enough automation, they can do the work. And so those folks are now left with learning. Maybe they didn't entirely do exactly the same job as the person who left, so they got to pick up some new skills, and they've got to handle and manage more on their plate. And how do we help those folks? So those are a few things
Right.
that have been coming up for us.
I think that's interesting. Now, Corey, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about technology and the enabling of technology, right? So a lot of us, some of us, I won't say a lot, some of us might think that technology, you wave that magic wand of technology and poof, things will happen. And I think that we were in agreement in our previous conversations of technology being a great enabler rather than a problem solver, right? So how are you handling that?
Well, I'd say, first of all, our company has people who are just, I'll say just out of college, but they could also be out of like a tech school, to the boomers. And so we have a big diversity of age groups, and everyone, as I say, has a different relationship with tech. And they come in, and even if they're 22, they might not like tech. Mm-hmm. And if they're 62, they might think it's great. So, finding them, again, where they are is really the challenge. Barnaby's thinking very high level. I'm really in a trench with my 330 staff people. So that's the first thing. It's like, how do I at least provide what they need? Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. The second thing, there's a tool in Go1 where it could be we embedded, I don't know if that's the word, embedded the search tool in our SharePoint. And so now we are educating staff. If you're looking for leadership, you're not just going to get the PDF from our leadership course, you're going to get some suggestions. And this is based on what they asked for. Mm-hmm. They said, we want recommendations and suggestions. We don't want you, sort of stuffing it down our throats, but if we need it and want it, we want to find it. And so it's so now we're educating them that it's there to see, because, sometimes you don't see what you don't know. You're looking at something, you don't even know what you're looking at. So right. We're showing them how to put learning in places where they'll need it. I think having something for a wide range of people with a wide range of needs. We don't do a ton of compliance in our company, but we have a lot of challenges. I mean, every day is different for everybody. So that's like a real help. And I can't know what all 330 people do. And, so we're all trying to find supports, instruction, tools, crutches. And so that's what I'm hoping the technology helps us with. And then the final thing I'll say is I do this webinar with people like week 2, and I say, I went to college with a typewriter. So I get why there's a challenge, but I want you to consider leaning into this learning and getting comfortable with this technology. I have a lot of stories on why you won't or you don't want to, but, I kind of invite them to consider what's available. And sometimes I even tell them how old I am. And they're like, wow, you do it too. But it's basically, just sort of trying to redirect them and get them to learn to use the tools that we have to inform their day and their job.
Right. And so what I'm hearing is a lot of this does fit into these 5 principles that we're talking about. So when you think about the second one, which is connecting with the right content, so what I'm hearing from you, Corey, is that you're giving them the way and the means to be able to help them connect with the right content, right? Because we cannot own that space. That's not a space that we as L&D owns. We can only nurture and support that space. So now what are we doing to nurture and support that space? And what I'm hearing then is by bringing the right tool to the right people at the right place at the right time, and then linking it to something that might be relevant to them, really does help propel, moving people forward. And I just read something interesting recently, is that, I don't know, how many of you are familiar with White Castle? Is that a guilty pleasure for anyone?
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So White Castle is currently prototyping 100 robots to flip burgers and drop French fries. So what does that mean for the future of roles, positions, and people? Upskilling and reskilling and becoming more future fit, right? Because there might be a robot there, maybe fully staffed in that back area, but a human still needs to manage that.
And maintain the robot.
And maintain them, right? So that's a whole shift in what we're thinking. And that's now. So then that means that we have to consider taking maturity in our L&D functions to a whole new level and connecting that through these 5 principles. And so I'm curious then, Barnaby, when we talk about connecting with the right priorities, what tips do you have? I mean, because I'm really curious about your position in particular, because it's not learning and development based. You're not education background,
Yep.
You're technology background. And I think that your perspective on how L&D can help connect to the North Star of the business would be really critical at this point.
Yeah, well, one of the things that attracted me to joining Go1, I've been with the company for about a year, is this notion of bringing together a very, very large library of learning content. I saw the power of bringing together many, many books, for example, in the marketplace at Amazon, and I've seen that elsewhere. But that's really just step one, is to amass, and we have amassed hundreds of thousands of courses. But then step 2 is, how do you actually help the individual or the organization and the individual, because both are stakeholders in this, to find the content that is most relevant for their needs as an organization from a strategic and sort of tactical perspective, and then also for the individual, for their success as individuals within that organization. And so, we work constantly, and we've made a number of improvements, but I still see a lot of opportunity for us as an industry and us as a player in this industry to do better, to really understand roles. My last company, we were in compensation management, and so there the challenge was, how do you match the way that a company thinks about a role or a title to the way other companies do, so you can figure out equitable pay. And we used to collect titles, and we'll be doing this at Go1 going forward. First impression manager is actually a title for a receptionist in the Los Angeles area. But I think as we get better at understanding actual roles, titles, and then within that, what are the skills, areas of responsibility, how do we go deep into the learning content and help people find that nugget of knowledge, wisdom, learning, experience, whatever it is that they can have through the e-learning that is the right thing for them. And so some of our partners, we have content from LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, hundreds of content providers. Often those courses are 12 hours long. And, I think, like I listen to audio books at the gym or, when I'm traveling, but I'd have a hard time sitting through 12 hours of video. I think that's probably not realistic. So how do we find ways to get people straight to the 15 minutes that are relevant to them and that matter for whatever's going on with them? So doing a lot of work on that. I think, the ability to be a one-stop shop. That was another thing in my last role as also the head of IT. I had probably a dozen different e-learning providers that I had to integrate into our systems and manage provisioning and passwords and get it either into Okta for one single sign-on or not. And so kind of this one-stop shop, it's all in one place, and we've done a lot of work to kind of normalize and make it look and feel more similar. It's still, the original intent shines through, but kind of the wrapper and or the ability to consume it through, say, Teams is there. Because I think to the point about technology, if you have to move from, say, Google Docs to Word, they're very, very similar, but the challenge of like the menus are slightly different or things. And so finding ways to keep things as consistent as possible so that the complexity underneath, which is there, doesn't sort of get blocked by, now how do I engage with the content again? So just kind of normalizing and standardizing and then improving matching are kind of two pillars of things that we're working on actively and have made, really introduced into the market.
Thank you. I think that that's really important. When we talk about technology in particular, it's ease of use, isn't it? If we think about where technology was not even 5 years ago and where we are today, we've seen those great leaps and bounds. I mean, 2 years ago, would you have thought to go to TikTok to learn how to do something new? No. You might have gone to TikTok to learn how to do a new dance craze, but you might not have gone there to learn how to cook a new thing in your air fryer. Right. So I think that there is a real pivot on how we're using technology to enable the underlying need of the organization. So Corey, I'd ask you, how did you, dig in to find out what the real needs of your organization was?
Survey, conversations, just, the things that everyone knows that you got to do, but sometimes you're like, didn't. But so that's what we did. We did a survey. How do they want their learning? What do they want from learning? Just a whole bunch of questions like that, because I really didn't want to get it wrong. And for us, we were looking for what people needed as well as value. I work at a nonprofit, so Okta out of my budget. I just couldn't do it. That's what I told the Okta dude. I could go on and on about that because I did comedy. So of course, anytime I hear a laugh, I'll just keep going. But so that was one. I asked them, "What do you want?" They're all grown-ups. They told me brutally. They're very brutal at my company. We're a nonprofit. We're all like nice people, but really, they're brutal. The other thing is, I got some, I would call them, the instructors, the people who do teach or try to, I involve them in the process. So I forced them to try all these different LMSs and do the meetings with me. And, when all was said and done, we all kind of agreed completely, which was interesting. So that's how we found out what they need, that they wanted content that was not just emergency training, but they wanted wellness. We work with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We work with students. So we needed a lot of, how to write a good email. We work with people right out of school. So, we just needed this diversity of content. So that's how I did it. It was, I'd like to say it was complicated, but it really is what all of you know already. And usually if I don't do it, it's because I'm being lazy and I don't want to work with other people. Sometimes I just want to do my task and move on, to be honest. But in this situation, I knew that it would be a real failure if I didn't take them through the process.
Right. So now how do we keep managers connected to learning, which is the other part, which is the fourth principle here, is maintaining a connection. So how do we keep, again, L&D doesn't own this process. This is something that we nurture and build, but management then becomes the owners of the process. So how do we keep them connected, engaged? They want to, they really want to go past the honeymoon period and see the growth. And so either of you have any experience and stories that you can share about that?
Go ahead, Barb.
Oh, I was just going to say, special sessions for them, showing them what's available.
Okay.
Mostly, they just want to keep their people engaged. And so it's showing them, we have someone, I want to say it's a manager in New York, and she told me every month since we've had this tool, she recommends a new thing, completely different. It doesn't have to do necessarily anything with what they're doing, or it could, to everyone. And then they just have a conversation, and it's kind of like coming here. It kind of takes them up here mentally and not in their tasks. I mean, this is just like one of the things we're doing, but for her, it's productive. I notice her people are like trying all these other things, and so it's working. But you can't take the human out of it.
Yeah, I would add, I think helping people develop habits, habits sort of beget habits and reinforcement. And so, and because they're especially in the engagement stuff, there's almost an infinite amount of things that are pretty universally relatable, like yoga or meditation or how to be a better partner with your colleagues. I think the other, though, important piece is data and reporting. And so for managers, providing them with data on how are people engaging, are they not engaging when you assign them or suggest or however it is you communicate, and just giving them dashboards and the ability just to actually see what's happening allows them to then take action, reinforce or not, or do whatever it is that seems appropriate for them.
Well, one thing that we can offer to you is with the Future Fit ebook, there was also a series of tools that were developed to support the ebook. One of those is what we're calling the Power Hour tool, and that is to help managers stay connected with the learning for their people. And so there's 5 different tools that reflect the 5 different principles. So to help you create your North Star, to help you curate better content, to help you better align the relevance, to help you keep the connection with your managers, and to help you assess impact. So those 5 tools go along with the ebook. So we want you to leave here being able to fully take this and run with it. So now when you think about other ways, when you think about assessing success, outside of amount of courses taken and percentage of participation, Corey, how are you measuring success of what you're doing?
Well, it's almost like I'm measuring it by the absence of complaints.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it sounds crazy.
No.
But I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I only hear from people when they're really mad, they're really frustrated. So I haven't really heard that many complaints lately, which is good. I have my key, that's not the way to say it, my key communicators, and they, I've just taken a little special time with them, but they say, hey, this is easy, this is fun, and for us, fun is really important in our culture, so having fun, gosh, I can go on and on. but I'll defer to Barnaby.
How would you like to see your clients measure success, Barnaby?
Well, I mean, most of what we can see is the data of what they're actually doing in terms of sort of measuring, again, minutes completed. But there are other things like the diversity of categories and types of content that's consumed. So I really, again, like to see people moving from the pure compliance thing, cybersecurity training, everybody's got to do it, to really going deeper maybe into some things that are going to help people be more successful in their professions, all the way up into that engagement stuff. So seeing a diversity of content type consumption, and then also just what they tell us, what we hear from them directly. We have a direct chat bot in our products that allow anybody who is a learner or a manager to interact and engage directly with our staff. And so we have a nice amount of sort of anecdotal stories and experiences that come back to us as well, of somebody who's struggling with this problem or that, and we help them through it, is also very rewarding.
Well, what's one of the stories you can share? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
But to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I think it was so our company actually was founded in Australia, and we have a lot of people there, and we actually have a significant kind of number of customers that are in the like emergency response, fire safety, those kinds of things. And I remember one of the local municipalities was looking for some content or something that they needed to be in compliance with government regulation, and we didn't have it, and we went out and found it for them and solved that problem for them. But I knew it came through chat was the thing that I remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in our initial introduction, I was mentioning this quality, and I think I must.
And I did promise to pass your compliments on to the
gosh.
manager
So
of the team. And
I'm a team
I did.
of one. I don't know how much L&D. If you have like 30 people, you're really lucky. But I manage the tech and I manage the content, and so I have to say sometimes it's a lot for me. And it's frustrating because I can't always find what is going wrong or what's going right. And so there is a bot, and I love bots, and I met bots at a conference in this like very location. But there's also a human.
Yeah, we have real people.
There's real people 24/7 who can help you figure out your solution. And the reason that is so great is because to get to my problem is usually a windy road. This happened, that happened, why are they seeing this? I don't know. It's not just like one thing. And so to be able to actually talk to the person behind the ticket first, and it's usually a very simple solution from their perspective, and I can explain it. And so they're available all the time, and it makes me as an admin using Go1 really great, because I know that I'm not submitting a ticket and then they get back to me when they get on shift, and then I get back to them when I get on shift, because a lot of tech people are in other time zones than I'm in, and often radically different. But it's really, it's been great, and I hope you never let them go or never change it. I mean, it's such a differentiator.
Well, beyond being tool specific,
Yeah. Okay.
how are you ensuring that what you're doing is meeting the needs of your organization?
Mostly asking, surveys. I think we've had to become more things to more people, where, Barnaby talked about it just being compliance, and we need mental health awareness and relaxation, and, so we're just trying to catch people and let them know that this is here for them at every step. So we are trying to get a lot of people to recommend this, whether it's our HR person or our data people. Why don't we go search for you? So there's...
How do you know it's working?
Well, it's the absence of complaints in my...
Right, there you go, so to circle that back around, right? So it could be something that is not measurement specific. But you can measure that though, because you can take for those of you who might have that sort of call center type of location, if you say that our complaints were X amount at the beginning of the year and then they're X amount at the end of the year, that's something that you can take back to stakeholders, right?
Right, and we also have some options for staff to give their brutal and honest feedback in total anonymity.
Okay.
I personally dislike that option, but we have it. And so that's how I know that they can be totally honest, because they have been in the past, and, you know, it's a safe space for them, and we get the honest feedback.
And I think that's important. How are you guys measuring success right now? Are you doing, so surveys probably one, is that, so we've got a culture survey that you do. Okay, so that takes care of, in the parlance of our industry, that takes care of our level ones, doesn't it? So I'm curious now, based on the conversation that we've had here today, what sort of ideas has this sparked? What kind of thinking has it made you go, I need to know more about that? Because conversations like this are not necessarily going to solve your problems, but what we want to do is we want to spark thinking. We want to spark action. And so subsequently, the 5 principles that we put forth, our hope is that it sparks some action. And so subsequently then, what might that look like? For me, once I started digging deeper into this, it was about, I think I need to dig even more deeper into this. Because it's hard to know, as I started off our discussion today, it was hard to know about what future skills are we going to need when we don't even know what future roles are going to be like. And so based on that, what sort of research am I going to have to do to be able to think generally, skills like compassion, or collaboration, or creativity, or being very specific, such as machine learning, or augmented reality, or artificial intelligence. And so that told me that I needed to do more research on what I thought might be coming down the pike. I need to get into the research field, for behavioral measurement, absolutely, because those soft skills is what's really going to drive. And I am not a big fan of the term soft skills. I mean, they're really core human skills. And so if we could do those better, stronger than we were before, we'd be better off.
Yeah, admittedly, I'm not an expert in that, but some things that I am seeing, there's actually a virtual reality company called Tailspin that is basically allows people in using a VR headset to interact with an avatar and have difficult conversations, and kind of the other persona reacts, and you kind of like giving performance management feedback or letting somebody go, those kinds of things. But I think there are also there are a lot of courses that are in our library around things like quality customer service and things like the things that are obvious probably to everybody in this room around how to be polite and how to say thank you and sincerely, et cetera, but that depending on people's backgrounds or experience level, they just may not have been exposed to. So I think there are things that are kind of down at the ground level that can be taught and that can be shown through some people modeling a type of behavior that maybe is inappropriate, and then in a different version of that. I've seen a lot of that. I think there are other tools that are emerging. There's actually a company, it's also a Seattle, I live near the Seattle area, or in the Seattle area. It's called Textio, that allows you to analyze any text and look for bias, because I think that's one of the other things. And so it's really helpful in recruiting, and it can help you identify. It'll tell you if a job description is biased more towards men or women in terms of who it's going to attract and why. It actually shows you. But it can also tell you about age and other kinds of dimensions of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I think is pretty cool. Kind of really, it's a little bit like Grammarly, but for bias.
Oh, wow.
So I think there's a lot out there, and there's a lot emergent, and it's really early, but I think if you start digging, you'll find quite a bit.
Well, I hope that you found, some worthwhile ideas for you to think about once you leave this room. So I'd like to thank Corey and I'd like to thank Barnaby for spending time with us today. You know, I hope that you all have a great and successful conference as you move through the rest of your day and into tomorrow. So thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks everybody for coming.